Welcome to the Stolen Brain podcast. This week I will be solo as Mel is off getting herself a fella in Kazakhstan, so we wish her all the best over there. It is a strange feeling to be here alone. Well, I'm not alone, I'm with Chance, but yeah, we're going to jump into today's topic. Today we're going to talk about the Beast of Gévaudan. Now, I do apologise for any mispronunciations. I googled it, but it's never going to be 100% accurate because, let's be honest, I don't speak French. So the Beast of Gévaudan is a creature that was blamed for at least 60 animal attack deaths in France during the 1960s. It has been subject to numerous legends, while some reports suggest the death toll could be well over 100. What sets apart the Beast of Gévaudan from other monstrous tales is how well documented and consistent the sightings were, and also the attacks were very real. So scientists believe the creature may have been an escaped circus animal, most likely a hyena. There was no circuses in the area though, for many years. And once more, this is an instance where scientific study falls mercy to the paranormal phenomena. As they scrambled for answers, the locals stood unified in their belief that this was in fact a werewolf that was here to consume the flesh of humanity. Descriptions of the beast were consistent. The only part of the beast that was subject to debate was the colour of its coat. This led researchers to believe that there was actually more than one creature. There was at least two or three. So sometimes it was red, and sometimes it was red with a large grey patch, or red with faint stripes along its back. So other times it had black and white patches spotted all over its body with no trace of red at all. Rarely it had colours or patterns that didn't incorporate red, black or white, sometimes incorporating a beige or brindle colour. So this has led to researchers actually thinking that this was a pack of animals rather than one singular creature. So the beast was a quadruped about the size of a horse, so pretty fucking big, resembling a hyena, a bear, a wolf and a panther all at once. It had a long wolf-like snout, lined with large teeth and canines. Its small round ears lay close to its head, and a long strong neck and thick powerful tail resembled that of a panther's. The tail is so formidable that the beast uses it as a weapon, knocking men and animals down with it. Anyone struck with it reports a considerable force. The beast's feet are the hardest to describe though. Some say it has cloven hooves, while others say each digit is tipped with a hoof. Others believe that the claws are just simply so heavy, thick and formidable that they merely resemble hooves from a distance. So this is a substantial creature. There's death records and mortuary records of his victims. So this is actual. This isn't legend and speculation. The creature that done it is legend and speculation. The attacks were very real. The attacks themselves spanned 90 to 80 kilometers, which I think for Americans is 56 to 50 miles. They're said to have been committed by one or more beasts of tawny or russet colour. These beasts have dark streaks or stripes, as I said earlier. Contemporary witnesses described their tails as longer than a wolf's and ending in a tuft. They attacked with formidable teeth and claws, appearing to be the size of a calf or cow. The beasts were said to fly or bound across fields. This is to bound across the field takes like a formidable muscle stature. The beast, some people identified it as a young lion, potentially a striped hyena, a large wolf, a large dog, or a wolf dog. Its identity, again, remains subject of debate and is still unresolved to this day. So the beast is seen as invulnerable, as it was said to pick itself up and escape after being hit by bullets of reputed skilled marksmen. The beast was also said to be extremely agile. As we said earlier, he was said to be able to easily jump over walls and across fields that a dog would simply have trouble with. In addition, the beast seemed to be everywhere at once. It was reported sometimes that would make 2 attacks in one day, but locations were several kilometers away from each other. So this kind of further cements that this wasn't one beast, but rather beasts. However, in many cases, these distances would be covered by a single animal within a reasonable period of time. So 2 of the beast's most singular traits were its familiarity and its boldness. It was also reported that at least until Francois Antoine's departure, the beast seemed to have no fear of man. When encountered resistance, it would move 40 paces away, sometimes sitting on its hindquarters for a few moments, and if not pursued, it would attack again. Then it would move away at a walk or a short trot. Several victims were attacked in the middle of villages, and testimonies related to the attacks were during the day. Finally, the beast was noted for being unusually aggressive, with some feeling that its attacks were too determined and ferocious to be driven entirely by hunger. So with a lot of animals and stuff like that, it is usually either a lack of food or encroaching environment. But this beast was neither. This was at a period of time where this village was very, secluded, and, for this creature to be so familiar with it, the area, that's what brought speculation that it was actually a person who transformed into a creature. So this tale has all the hallmarkings of a werewolf story, and we'll get into more why I actually think that to be the case as we continue. So there are also theories about the Beast of Gévaudan being a serial killer, with no wolf required. One way to go with this would be a killer imitating a wolf or werewolf, whether to disguise their crimes as natural or to strike supernatural terror into the populace. Now, this was a time in history where, it's the 1700s. We're talking the time of the nobles and castles and stuff. So it will be a time of great superstition and also a time of great kind of fear and unknown. It would have taken days to get from place to place, as highways and roads as we know today, modern paved roads wouldn't be a thing. So it would have taken days to progress. So stories usually, when they came as heavy and as aggressive as this, would have struck a lot of fear into its populace, especially being so gruesome. So eventually the Kingdom of France used a considerable amount of wealth and manpower to hunt the animals responsible, including the resources of several nobles, soldiers, royal huntsmen and civilians. The number of victims differ according to the source. A 1987 study estimated there had been 210 attacks. In 1987, a study estimated there had been 210 attacks, resulting in the death of 113 individuals and 49 injuries, including women, children and men of all ages. So 98 of the victims that were killed were found partially eaten. Other sources claim the animal or animals killed between 60 to 100 adults, and the number of children and injured were well more than 30. Victims were often killed by having their throats torn out. Several animals identified as the beast were reportedly killed before the attacks were stopped. So there was kind of a panic surrounding it. They started killing, any large dogs in the area, wolves, obviously, anything that kind of correlated with the creature. And it wasn't just in Gévaudan; it was happening across parts of France. So circuses, their lions and stuff, and their hyenas would be put down. So the Beast of Gévaudan committed its first recorded attack in the early summer of 1764. A young woman who was tending cattle in Mercery Forest near the town of Langon in the eastern part of Gévaudan saw a beast like a wolf, yet not a wolf, come at her. However, the bulls in the herd charged the beast, keeping it at bay, and they then drove it off after it attacked a second time. Shortly onwards, on the 30th of June, the beast's first official victim was recorded. 14-year-old Jean Boulet was killed near the village of Les Hubecks in Legon on the 1st of July, which is unfortunate. And the victim was buried without sacraments because he could not confess before her death. However, the burial certificate specifies that she was killed by the ferocious beast. So there is a French citation of this. It wouldn't be in English, but I won't even try and pronounce that. Which suggests that she is not the first victim, but the first declared victim. A second victim was reported on the 8th of August that year, and it was another 14-year-old who lived in the hamlet of Masmegin, in the parish of Puy-Léron. I actually kind of ate that. These two victims were killed in the Allier Valley. So, yeah, kind of very tragic kind of... It wasn't just one or two deaths, and it wasn't done in a way that usual animals would act. What stands out to me is the way that the kill was always to the neck, the jugular, which seems very kind of consistent with big cats. If you see tigers and stuff like that, they will always go for the kind of the bite on the neck as like a quick kill, and that suggests more for feeding than for, you know, fun or for whatever you might think, like malice or so from the end of August and in September, other victims were recorded in the Mercury Forest and its surroundings. Throughout the remainder of 1764, more attacks were reported in the region. Very soon, terror gripped the populace because the beast was repeatedly preying on men, women, and children as they were alone, tending livestock in the forest around Gévaudan. So reports know that the beast seemed to only target the victim's head or neck regions, as I said. The witnesses claimed the beast had supernatural abilities. They believed it could walk on its hind legs and feet like humans. They believed the beast performed astounding leaps, and they also believed the beast could repel bullets and come back from the dead after being struck dead and wounded. So there were reports, as I said, that the creature was shot and was hit in the head with a kill shot, and upon approach it rose as if nothing had happened, like it was simply stunned by these large kind of bullets, which I think this would have been an era of muskets, so it's quite large musket balls and stuff that would have been hitting it. So by late December 1764, rumours had begun circulating that there were a pair of animals behind the killings. This is because there had been so many attacks in a short space of time, and because many of the attacks appeared to have occurred or were reported simultaneously. Some contemporary accounts suggest the creature was seen with another such animal, while other reports said that the beast was accompanied by young. So not only is this beast, got its homies with him, it's got his kids, bring the kids for a happy meal is the energy that they're bringing. It is quite strange for a creature just to pop up and start breeding unnoticed, and then suddenly the population boomed. So on the 31st of December, the Bishop of Mende, Gabriel Florent, the Chul Beaupare, also the Count of Gévaudan, called for prayers and penance. This appeal has remained in history under the name Commandment of the Bishop of Mende. All the priests of the diocese had to announce it in their faith to their faithful. In the long text, the bishop described the beast as a scourge sent by God to punish men for their sins. He quoted St. Augustine in evoking the justice of God, as well as in the Bible and the divine threats uttered by Moses. I will arm the teeth of wild beasts against them. Following this commandment, prayers of 40 hours devotion were observed for 3 consecutive Sundays. In spite of these divine pleas, the massacre continued. In spite of these divine pleas, the massacres continued. On the 12th of January 1765, Jacques Portefax and 7 children from the village of Villeret in the parish of Chanechilles were attacked by the beast, and after several attacks they drove it away by staying simply grouped together. The encounter eventually came to the attention of King Louis the 15th, who awarded 300 livres to Portefax and another 350 livres to be shared up among his companions. So the king also awarded the Portefax with an education at the state's expense. He then decreed that the French state would help find and kill the beast. On the 11th of February in the parish of Les Mazous, there was a little girl buried about 12 years old who had been partly devoured on the day by a man-eating beast that was ravaging the country for nearly 3 months. Now, this is a gravesite that is it is found. You can go visit it, and it's quite tragic. This is one of those stories that kind of blends paranormal with real life. Because I think there's a period where, if you discover what's paranormal, if you discover that it becomes not paranormal anymore, it becomes scientific fact. And I think that's something that people don't look at a lot of the time. And this is a very tragic story. I do apologize if it's triggering to anybody. But we'll move on. By April 1765, the story of the beast had spread throughout Europe. The Courier d'Avignon and the English journalists made fun of the impotence of the royal power in the face of a simple animal. Meanwhile, the local bishop and its intendants had to deal with an influx of mail, people from all over France suggesting more or less eccentric methods to overcome the beast. The court also issued depictions of the Beast of Gévaudan, so that everyone was less terrified as they approached it, and it became less likely to be mistaken, and so that the pack of hunting dogs could be trained to trace the beast thanks to an effigy executed in cardboard. So they went all out. They made training dummies. They made they wanted this creature. So the Force Captain Duhamel Clermont Prince. So Force Captain Duhamel of the Clermont Prince Dragoons and his troops were soon sent to Gévaudan. Although extremely zealous in his efforts, non-cooperation on his part with the local herders and farmers stalled Duhamel's efforts on several occasions. He almost shot the beast, but was hampered by the incompetence of his guards. When the village of Le Malzieu was not present and ready as the beast crossed the river Trouvière, Duhamel became frustrated when Louis XV agreed to send 2 professional wolf hunters, Jean-Charles Marc Antoine Vosmili de Henneville and his son Jean-Francois. Captain Duhamel was forced to stand down and return to his headquarters in Clermont-Ferrand. Cooperating with de Henneville was impossible, as the two differed too much in their strategies. Duhamel organised wolf hunting parties, while de Henneville and his son believed the beast could only be shot during the use of stealthy techniques. The father and son arrived in Clermont-Ferrand on the 17th of February 1765, bringing 8 bloodhounds that had been trained in wolf hunting. Over the next 4 months, the pair hunted for Eurasian wolves, believing that one or more of these animals was a beast. However, when the attacks continued, the Hennevilles were replaced in June 1765 by Francois Antoine, sometimes wrongly identified with his son Antoine de Bertin, the king's sole bearer and lieutenant of the hunt, who arrived in Le Mazou on June 22nd of that year. On August 11th, Antoine organised a great hunt that saw the defeat of the Maid of Gévaudan. Marie-Jeanne Vallée, about 20 years old, was the servant of a parish priest on Paulhock. In the company of other peasant women, she was taken a footbridge to cross a small stream when the beast appeared. The woman took a few steps back and the beast threw itself on Marie-Jeanne. The latter managed to plant her spear into its chest. The beast dropped into the river and disappeared into the woods. The story quickly reached Antoine, who went to the scene. He found the spear was indeed covered in blood, and that the traces were similar to those of the beast. In a letter to Saint Florentin, the minister of the king's house, comparing Marie-Jeanne to Joan of Arc, and nicknamed her the Maid of Gévaudan. So on the 20th or 21st of September, Antoine killed a large grey wolf measuring 80 centimetres, 31 inches high, 1.7 metres or 5'7" feet long, and weighing 60 kg or 130 pounds. The wolf, which was named Le Coupe de Chazé after the nearby Abbaye de Chazé, was believed to be quite large for a wolf. Antoine officially stated, "We declare the present report signed by our hand and we never saw a big wolf that could be compared to this one. Hence, we believe that this could be the fearsome beast that caused so much damage. The animal was further identified as the culprit of by several attack survivors who recognised the scars on its body inflicted by the victims defending themselves. Among them were Marie Jean Vallée and her sister. After the report was written, Francois Antoine's son loaded the animal into his horse and sent it off to Paris. At Saint-Flour, he showed it to Monsieur de Montluc in Clermont-Ferrand and had it stuffed. He left Clermont on the 27th of September and arrived at Versailles on the 1st of October, where he was hailed as a hero. The beast was exhibited in the Jardins Rue du Roi. Meanwhile, Francois Antoine and his gamekeeper stayed in the Auvergne woods to chase down the beast's female partner and her 2 grown pups, which had been reported near the Abbey of Chazes on the 19th of October. Antoine succeeded in killing the female wolf and a pup, which seemed already much larger than its mother. At the examination of the pup, it appeared to have a double set of dew claws, basically like a dog's thumb higher up on their arm, for those who don't know. A hereditary malformation found in the Bage Rouge or Bourcon dog breed. The other pup was shot and hit and was believed to have died while retreating between the rocks. Antoine returned to Paris on the 3rd of November and received a large sum of money, over 9,000 livres, as well as fame, titles and awards. So, you know, the story seems to have ended there. But then the month of November passed without any attacks being reported, leading to the populace to hope that Antoine had indeed killed the beast. In a letter from the 26th of November, the syndic Etienne Lafon affirmed to the intendant of the Languedoc, we no longer hear of anything relating to the beast. Before long, however, new attacks were reported around the communes of Sagug and Les Souris, suggesting that the beast was either still alive or had been replaced by another. The first incident on the 2nd of December saw the targeting of 2 boys aged 6 and 12. The beast tried to take the youngest, but it was successfully fought off by the older boy. Soon after, fatal attacks were reported, with a number of witnesses observing that the current beast showed no fear around cattle at all. A dozen more deaths are reported to have followed the attacks near Las Bessayette St. Mary until the beginning of 1766. The attacks remained sporadic and no one knew if they were caused by the beast or by wolves. However, in a letter to the intendant of Auvergne on the 1st of January 1766, Monsieur de Montluc seemed convinced that the beast had indeed reappeared. The intendant alerted the king, but King Louis XV no longer wanted to hear about a ferocious beast that, as far as he was concerned, his arbor's bearer had already killed. From then on, newspapers no longer reported any of the attacks that occurred in Gévaudan or in the south of Auvergne. In March 1766, the attacks multiplied. The local gentlemen now knew that their salvation would not come from the court. So basically, you know, villagers thought that this was a misidentification. You know, and it would seem that way. You know, if you see the way that wolves act, it is strange for it to only be a male, a female, and their cubs. You know, wolves don't act like that. They're pack hunters. They're pack orientated. But you know, the French government was just like, we kill the dog, you know, and that's what a lot of people actually believed it to be, was rather than a wolf, to be a dog that was stuffed and kind of, you know, Jean had actually pulled the wool over the monarchy's eyes in order to claim an easy sack of lives or levers. So yeah, they kind of got left in it. So on the 24th of March, the particular estates of Gévaudan were held at the Marvejols. Etienne Lafont and a young Marquis de Apacho, a local nobleman, recommended poisoning the corpses of dogs and carrying them to the usual passages of the beasts. However, this proved ineffective as the beast did not seem to cover as much ground as before. Rather, it settled on the Troismont region in it was basically a 15-kilometer area centered around Mount Mouchet, Mount Grand, and Mont Chavet. Furthermore, the beast's modus operandi had changed. It seemed less aggressive and much more cautious, as revealed by various correspondence, including that of Canon Ollier, parish priest of Los and Etienne Lafont, at the beginning of 1766. At the beginning of 1767, the attacks experienced a slight lull, but resumed in the spring. With no new help coming, the populace no longer knew what to do except to pray. Local pilgrimages increased, mainly to the Notre Dame de Beaulieu and the Notre Dame de Estors. On the 18th of June, it was reported that the Marquis... It was reported to the Marquis that the beast had been seen the day before in the parishes of Noz-O'Reilly's and Disjes. In the latter, it had killed 19-year-old Jean Bastide of the village of Les Binaires. As events transpired, Bastide would be the final confirmed victim of the beast, though many would go on to be unreported as the press did no longer seem interested. So, the killing of the creature that eventually marked the end of the attacks was credited to a local hunter named Jean Chastel, who shot it at the slopes of Mount Mouchet, now called the Saône des Herbes. During a hunt organised by the Marquis d'Apature on the 19th of June 1767. In 1889, Abbot Porcher told the Edivin oral tradition, which said that the pious hero Chastel shot the creature after reciting his prayers. But this is not backed up by contemporary reports, obviously, because, the papers and stuff weren't reporting on it, so he relied on a kind of oral tradition. And, people... unless you have a degree, aren't believed, is the consensus that I'm getting from this story. The story about a large caliber silver. So it is reported that Castel shot the creature with large caliber silver bullets made from the melted down metals of the Virgin Mary. The body was then loaded onto a horse and brought to the Chateau de Besque of Marquis d'Apature, located in Charry, where it was necropsied by Dr. Bollinger, a surgeon at Saigs. Dr. Bollinger's post-mortem report on animal, along with the survivor's testimony of the beast's attack, had transcribed by the royal notary Roche, Etienne Marin, and is known as the Marin Report. The results of the examination were consistent with a large wolf or wolf dog, but the remains were incomplete by the time Bulger required them. Preluding conclusive identification of the animal, the beast was then exhibited at the chateau for about 12 days, when the Marquis d'Apature lavishly received the crowds that thronged to see the remains. The Marquis d'Apature instructed a servant named Gilbert to take the beast to Versailles to show it to the king. According to oral tradition reported by Abbot Porcher, Jean Chastel accompanied Gilbert, but Louis XV disdainfully rejected them because the remains summarily stood by an apothecary who had contented himself with replacing the entrails with straw, gave off a stench that made heat. That in the heat made it even more unbearable. The animal was then reportedly buried within the grounds of Versailles, or the Chateau de Marly. Though Gilbert finally arrived in Paris, went to stay at the Hotel Particulier of Mr. de la Rochefort Comte, to whom he at the same time gave a letter in which Mr. d'Apature begged the Lord to inform the king of the happy deliverance of the monster. The king was at Compline at the time, and according to the news, he was told he gave orders to Mr. de Buffon to visit and examine this animal. This naturalist, in spite of his dilapidation, to which the worms had reduced it, and the fall of the hairs, including in the heat in the end of July and the beginning of August, in spite of all this and the bad odour that it gave off, he offered after a serious examination, judged that it was only a big wolf. As soon as the Buffon had an examination of the animal, Gilbert hastened to have it buried because of its great stench, and he had it been so inconvenienced by it that he was sick and bedridden for more than 15 days in Paris. He suffered from the disease for more than 6 years, and he attributed this bad smell that he breathed for so long, to the poor health, and he had been boarded with since that time that he smelled it. So he smelled this corpse, and then he became so sick, that it fucked him up. So according to the servant's account, Jean Chastel did not accompany Gilbert to Paris. Likewise, the king was not in Paris to receive Gilbert. Instead, sending the Comte de Buffon, who himself left no record of the event, to examine the remains, rather than being buried at the Versailles, or Marley, or alternatively kept in the Jardin Rue du Rose Natural History Collection. The beast was probably buried in the garden of a private mansion owned by Louis Alexandre de la Rochefoucauld, a gentleman sharing a distant common ancestor with the Marquis d'Aubert. La Rochefont's mansion, located on the Rue de Seine, would be demolished in 1825. So it does seem like, there's a lot of kind of, smoke and mirrors. It almost feels like they're trying to cover it up because, we already paid this other guy who killed a dog. It would be real fucked up if it turned out that he didn't even kill the right animal, and now because we didn't dispatch naturalists and aides and stuff like that to them to help get it preserved and to get it identified, the beast became so kind of rotted, and it was falling apart at that point that it was just it looked like a dog, so they said it was a dog. There's a lot of kind of like whatever about it. It's kind of like they moved past. It's like the story kind of lost interest to them. It's kind of lost steam. So after Chastel's beast was shot, the attack seemed to have stopped for good. Jean Chastel would be granted 72 livres from the Aussies on the 9th of September, while his fellow hunter Jean Therese received 78 livres on the 17th of September. The remaining hunters who had accompanied them on the hunt were granted a shared sum of 312 livres on the 3rd of May 1768. So this seems to me like, they give 9,000 to one dude who was like, oh yeah, I shot this, here it is, it's just a large dog, wolf dog, here's 9,000 loaves, titles, whatever. And now the person who actually did it, he shot the beast with a silver bullet, he said a prayer. He was given it was a fee, but not as substantial as the 9,000 that the earlier hunter got. And Jean Chastel was the one who eradicated the beast for once and for all. I do believe that he deserved a little bit more credit than he was given, and the hunting party and his partner. So on the 20th of June 1767, the day after the death of the animal killed by Jean Chastel, the royal notary wrote an autopsy report on the Marquis d'Aubert, and was preserved in the French National Archives. The memoir was recovered in 1952 by historian Elise Seguin. It provides precise information on this animal, which seemed to us to be a wolf, but extraordinary and very different by its figure and its proportions from the wolves seen in this country. So already we see that there were these kind of like reports that were written to kind of cover up. It kind of felt like a cover-up that they were doing, as to not spread mass hysteria. And even their own reports admitted this, that this wasn't your average wolf. The report detailed the dental formula. The upper jaw consists of 20 teeth, 6 incisors, 2 canines, and 12 molars. The lower jaw was 22. 6 incisors, 2 canines, and 14 molars. This likely points to a canid. The document also describes the animal's wounds and scars. Finally, includes the testimonies of several people who recognised it. The Marin report itself, while admittedly working from a decay and incomplete animal, describes the specimen as a wolf of unusually large proportions. This animal, which seemed to us to be a wolf, but extraordinary and very different by its figure, its proportions, and its bodily omissions from the wolves that once seized in this country. They are certified by more than 300 people all around who came to see it. Despite the general consensus that the beast was a wolf or another wild canid, several alternative theories for its identity have been proposed. Some think it was a sub-adult male lion who escaped from a menagerie due to the beast's size and some descriptions being closer to a lion than a wolf. Others believe that it was an escaped striped hyena due to some drawings of the beast describing it as such. Another theory was that a large feral dog or wolf dog was responsible, since some of the witnesses described the beast as looking similar to a wolf but at the same time noticeably different. According to modern scholars, though, public hysteria at the time of the attacks likely attributed to the widespread belief that the supernatural beasts or beasts roamed Gévaudan. However, the deaths were attributed to the beasts were more likely to have been the work of one or more individual wolves or wolf packs. Attacks by wolves were a very serious problem during the era, not only in France but throughout Europe, with thousands of deaths attributed to wolves in the 18th century alone. In the spring of 1765, in the midst of the Gévaudan hysteria, an unrelated series of attacks occurred near the commune of Soissons, northeast of Paris, when a single wolf killed at least 4 people over a period of 2 days, before being tracked and killed by a man armed with a pitchfork. In a 2021 talk by Francois-Louis Peslier, it was argued that based on descriptions of the beast's appearance and behaviour, as well as an inferred historical distribution, it was the most likely candidate for the beast was an Italian wolf, also known as Canis lupus italiacus. These wolves are known to have a reddish summer pelt, dark stripes in their backs and tails, and a distinctive skull shape compared to other wolves, which somewhat tally with contemporary descriptions of the beast. Despite this, the villagers and the folk tales still have a belief that this creature was not one of known legend and more of a supernatural belief. And there's certain parts of the stories that still don't make any sense. This attack happened for a large sum of time, and it continued for a large sum of time, and it ended only after a man shot it with a silver bullet, which aligns with the werewolf mythos. Silver, being coming from the story of Jesus, the 30 pieces of silver, that being like a holy mineral. It kind of deteriorating, especially after being shot with it, was crazy. I think there was a lot of smoke and mirrors. I think Louis XV knew he fucked up and he paid the wrong man. I think it was all covered up, and I think it was, it could have been a werewolf. I don't know enough about it. I didn't see it. So I believe these locals because of how many of them said it, and I believe that they believe what they saw, and what they described was terrifying, and it didn't sound of natural order. But at the same time, I'm open to being a subspecies or another species of animal that was. This was a time of, people were branching out. We were, using land for farming. We were branching out, especially in the area. Cattle farmers were branching out. So I think it was a case of disturbed land, territory of creatures that weren't known to science prior to this. So I think it was just a case of, we didn't. This is 1765, so humanity didn't know what we know now. I'm sure if we had more, we probably would have identified the creature, and who knows, we would have had a different subspecies of animal to look at. Whether it was, I saw reports that suggested that it might have been a species of prehistoric hyena that was still living in some of the forests around Paris. Other ones were, hybrid dogs, a mutated gene in and within the wolf specimens. Some even gone as far as to say that it was a mixed crossbreed between a wolf and a bear. Some saying that it was a bear that had mange. But yeah, I don't have a consensus. if you do, let us know on all of our social media pages. This is definitely one of the most substantial, I think, supernatural or cryptozoological stories. But again, one of the more controversial ones because of, there's always going to be controversy, but this one, because there's so much evidence, the evidence then becomes in dispute of what said evidence even means, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's what we had for you today. We didn't have Melissa. Hopefully we have her on the next episode. Shortly we should be starting the kind of Christmas run up, because it seems early, but we're halfway through November now. That's, I'd say, about 4 episodes. We will be taking a break over the kind of Christmas. We will get back with a timeline, but we will be back in the new year, absolutely, with the rest of the stories. So if you haven't followed us on social media, please do. We're in all the usual places. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do leave a review, and let us know what you thought in the comments. We'll catch you in the next one. Goodbye.